Good evening. The Design Review Board meeting of October 13th, 2022 is called to order, and it's 5:01. We're starting really close to on time. The meeting is being broadcast live on Glendale TV. It's viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6 and also at AT&T UVerse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100, and you can call that number anytime during the meeting, and someone will put you in a queue, and we'll wait until the item is heard, and then we will call on you to testify. We'll be submitting your questions and comments in real time to the DRB. Current HPC agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. And now we will have a roll call. Board Member Lakareff.
Present.
Board Member Kaskanian.
Present.
Board Member Chagayan.
Present.
Board Member Welsh.
Present.
And Chair Simonian.
Present.
Excellent. I have everyone here. The first item of business is to welcome our newest member. It was Joseph Kaskanian's first evening with us at DRB, and hopefully one of many to come. I have a little bit of introduction. Bring it on. Joseph's an experienced marketing professional who holds a Bachelor of Science in International Business and Marketing from Cal Poly Pomona and an MBA from Woodbury. He's also an active ANCA board member, and we look forward to his participation and are glad that he's able to give his time to the city. And if he'd like to introduce himself, that would be great.
Thank you so much for that, Jay. Hi, everyone. My name is Joseph. I actually moved to the city of Glendale about 6 years ago when I fell in love with my wife. The city brought me here, the Jewel City. Our city and community is constantly changing and growing, and this growth brings new opportunities, but also comes with challenges. As a design review board member, I will be the voice of Glendale residents, ensuring that each new construction project enhances the city and represents its traditions. I'm excited to take this challenge and continue to make Glendale a great place to live, work, and raise a family. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, the agenda for this meeting of October 13th, 2022 was posted on the city's website on October 6th, 2022, and on the bulletin board outside City Hall on October 10th, 2022. We have a set of minutes for the board's approval from August 25th, 2022. Any comment?
Any comments or a motion?
I think Board Member Lakareff and I are going to have to be the only ones moving since we're the only two here. So I will move that we adopt the minutes.
I second the motion.
Very good. And just, are we able to do that with a vote of two? I guess, yeah, we have no choice. Yeah.
We have no choice. They'll have to abstain and we'll just, yeah, right.
Okay, perfect. Did we just do a vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Board Member
Yes,
Lakareff?
for all intents and purposes, yes.
Okay, 2-0. And I'll hand it over to Chair Simonian.
Thank you. Well, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Toledo for her to start us off from staff's point of view. And if we need a few minutes to set up the computer, we could do so.
Even shorter. Let's switch.
Okay, board members, good evening. This first item before you is located at 3202 East Chevy Chase Drive in the Chevy Chase Canyon area. The project involves the construction of a new 607 square foot second story addition and add 702 square feet at the ground level of the existing one-story single-family house, which is approximately 1685 square feet. The house is built in 1938. It currently has a detached 361 square foot garage, which is proposed to remain, and the lot size is 8,640. There's the existing house in its current form and some surrounding context, if you will. I went went over the general context a little bit in terms of characteristics of the site. The project is located in the R1R zone, hillside, or restricted residential. It is fronting two streets. It fronts Chevy Chase Drive, and it also fronts Charing Cross. It is relatively it gradually slopes up from Chevy Chase Drive. The house is somewhat situated on a relatively little bit of a flat pad, but then it starts stepping up from Chevy Chase. The lot is somewhat irregular, and again, it's developed with an existing one-story house. And the project involves the interior and exterior remodel of the house, complete facade renovation from the exterior. The design of the house or architecture will change, and we'll discuss that a little bit further in the presentation. Again, I went over a little bit into the additions, but just to clarify, it's 607 square feet, new second story. The 702 square foot addition will take place on the first floor. It involves both 16 square feet at the front facing Chevy Chase Drive and 607 square feet facing Charing Cross at the rear of the house. Total proposed addition is 1,309 square feet. Total square footage for the house, existing plus new, will be 2,994 square feet. There's also the 189 square foot front covered porch, an entry that's being proposed, and a 373 square foot covered patio at the rear. There's an existing, again, two-car garage. It's detached. It will remain at the back, and it will also the new project involves the construction of a second garage at 474 square feet. That'll be an attached garage, also accessible from Charing Cross. The proposal, as I indicated, will involve changes to the exterior as it relates to the design and materials, including aluminum-clad wood windows, external grids, off-white smooth stucco color, and brown accent, again, for the windows and the eaves and other architectural details, and new Spanish style, all of it consistent with the design that they're going for, which is Spanish style. Project is exempt from CEQA review as a Class 1 for existing facilities under the state CEQA guidelines 15301. This is the existing house on the screen with the adjacent properties. In terms of context, we have a one-story house to the immediately adjacent to the east and then to the west. And then the subject site, just a little glimpse of it in the middle. This is a little bit more for context. I discussed the locations of the addition, so I won't go into too much detail, but I went over it earlier. The 16 square foot addition at the front is facing Charing Cross, and then the second floor addition pretty much covers over the majority of, from the center towards the east side of the existing footprint, leaving more massing relief, if you will, along the east, along the west side. Oops, I wanted to kind of highlight, this is the location of the new driveway. This is the new garage that's being proposed. There will be stair access. I'll kind of go into that a little different slide so it's better understood, but there will be not only a driveway access, but also pedestrian access for the residents to access the property from Charing Cross, which again, it's at a higher elevation, so they'll have to go down to their rear yard. So they are proposing some curved stairs there, which will access their rear yard. And then the existing garage, detached garage, will remain in its current form. Floor plan for the first floor. And all this information's in your packet, so I won't go into too much details. The new roof plan. the proposed elevations. I'll go into a little bit about some of staff comments. So as we mentioned, it's a traditional, a change from a traditional style to a more Spanish style. The mass and scale of the second story addition is compatible with those adjoining to the, nearby properties in the neighborhood. We do have some comments about the mass of the garage at the back. I'll go into a little bit more details on that. But in terms of its scale, it seems like along Charing Cross, it's viewed more as a one-story, as that the addition slopes upward. So as you're standing on Charing Cross looking down, you'll see more of like a one-story scale volume, if you will. Clearly, you will be able to see a two-story from Chevy Chase Drive. The overall proposed two-story, along with the overall height, appears to be compatible with the adjacent and the other homes in the neighborhood. Overall, again, the scale and proportions of the addition are appropriate to the style of the house and the neighborhood. So going back to, let me go to the next slide, maybe we could get a better view of the area that we're discussing in terms of the garage. Where staff comment is to provide perhaps, the comment is that the flat roof at the new garage is appropriate, but it's a little tall, a little bulky in appearance, so it would benefit from having a slight more reduction by lowering the roof parapet height, again, in accordance per the suggested condition that staff has listed in the staff report. And I'll go back to the other slide, again, because there's a house kind of skews at the back, so this drawing is the area that we're referring to of the rear view. But overall, the remodel will give the house, again, a more of a contemporary Spanish appearance, which is appropriate, and the colors, materials, and details and finishes that are being incorporated are consistent and compatible with the chosen style. This is a kind of a perspective of what it will look like viewed from Chevy Chase Drive. The proposed landscaping, most of it will remain with some slight changes. Again, the material board we discussed earlier, and staff again is recommending approval subject to the suggested recommended conditions included in your staff report, which is, again, we discussed to reduce the height of the garage as much as possible to reduce its heavy appearance and to better blend with the house, provide some general comments to provide a cut sheet for the new walkway and the material shown on the side plan, and to show light fixtures on the building that's consistent with the Spanish style. And with that, before I conclude, we did receive numerous correspondence in support of the project, and those emails were forwarded to the board.
Yes, we received them. Thank you.
And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Toledo. Do we have any questions for staff at this point? Yes, Board Member Welsh.
Just a clarification, really, I think, because I think in the staff report it talked about the tile being a two-piece tile, but I'm not sure that the material board is exactly reflective of a two-piece tile, so I just want to confirm that, in fact, we are talking about two-piece tiles, right?
That's my understanding. The architect is here, we'll confirm, because
Okay,
we would like to
I'll
confirm that
direct
as well.
then. Okay, very good, thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this point?
No.
All right, well, with that, we'll open the hearing, and Mr. Garagos, you want to start us off? Welcome.
Good to see all of you. Thank you, Milko, for all your work on this one. We have a very interesting project, and the boys are here in support, and hopefully they will talk later. I was youngest of three sons, so I love that it's three nubs, as my dad would say. The property has sort of an interesting set of axes and rotations in it, which is, I think, plays perfectly into sort of a vernacular Spanish style. It lets you play with some forms and break up things naturally. So I think that sort of helped us, all that possibility of rotation. So I did set the second floor back, so it's a very minimal impression from Chevy Chase. It's not like a two-story face that's on the street. It actually pulls back into it, and if you think about the garage and back, I guess the only real question is the garage and back, and I can focus on that. If you think about it, the flat area that's facing Charing Cross, that's the width of a regular two-car garage. So it's not, it may appear to be large, but in reality, it's just the face of a what would be a two-car garage, right at just over 20 feet. We are doing a little bit of parapet on it because, as you know, on a Spanish house, it's difficult to get solar panels, especially when you have a hip roof. So that actually worked out to be nice that area was flat. So let us have some area to do solar panels. It originally had a sort of a trapezoidal hip roof that I enjoyed. That was fun, and actually talking with staff, we decided to take it off and then realized that it would help out with the solar panels. So we're very happy about the fact that it's a flat roof there. The height of it is really just to give you a little bit of parapet, so when you're staring from Charing Cross, you're not looking at a whole bunch of solar panels. So there's a reason for that parapet height. In addition to just wanting some height within the garage, you know, as on a hillside property, there really isn't sort of accessible yard for vehicles or anything else. So it's a means of having some additional space inside the garage. But the overall height of it is not dramatic in any way when you think about it in relation to the level of Charing Cross. It's 13 feet above, which, you know, is under what would be if it was in other situations. So, but the majority of the reason for it was to minimize the impact of solar panels, just so you're not staring at solar panels from that direction. To answer the question about the tile, there was sort of a cost consideration as we went through it. That it originally was talking about doing a two-piece, but we decided to go with the one-piece, which is consistent with the material board. So that is what we're proposing. So answer that question. The owners did a great job of outreach, which I always request owners do, and which was supplied. All of the adjacent properties are in support. I think you have emails that are in support, and there's the adjacent property owner that's here who's speaking in support. So we think we've talked with the community and tried to be sensitive to them. I think the impact in reality is very minimal to everybody. The majority of it's happening in the center of the old house, and its impact from both properties and from both street frontages really gives the feel of a one-story. I mean, from both directions. So with that, I could answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Garagos. Do we have any questions for the architect? No?
I have
Board Member Walsh?
The shape of the garage is kind of odd. Can you explain what was thinking there?
Well, you know, it's one of those things. You're given a certain container and you try to fit in what you can. Mm-hmm. That is the 15-foot setback. Like I said, there's many axes and rotations on this property, and that was just a means of trying to get a usable garage space. It's a little bit of what is left that we could build into. Mm-hmm. But again, if it appears like that's a large facade, but it's really just the two-story front, a two-car garage facade. It's not very large. Mm-hmm. It just appears that way on the plan.
And if we were to adopt the recommendation about reducing the height of that, do you think that that is something you could reasonably accomplish, or do you think that you need to really stick with what it's planned?
I think it's, as I said, I was focusing on that. I think it's very important that it stays. I think it would be a real missed opportunity to be staring horizontally at a whole bunch of solar panels. Mm-hmm. I think when you weigh the two options, I think it's not helpful. And like I said, it's really just the width of a two-car garage. Mm-hmm. It's a very minimal facade facing Charing Cross. So to reduce it a foot or something, I just can't see that being meaningful. And I think the detriment is much higher. So we're very strong on keeping it where it is.
Do you need the entire surface area, the flat surface area that is proposed for solar panels, or could you do it with a little bit less?
You definitely need it. As you see, if you look on the roof plan, there really isn't much area to do, especially with a larger home. to try to get enough solar panels. You would need that entire area to make it worthwhile.
Okay.
Everything else is a hip roof, so there's, as you know, it looks worse when you try to put it on a hip roof Spanish with tile and the whole bit, so,
Got it. Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
I have a question. Yes. Yeah, I was wondering, can you pull up the north elevation for me? So the front, the one that's listed as, let's see, I'm trying to see the front facing, yeah, it was kind of
north would be
written
the
over.
front.
Correct. The roof, kind of in the center there, there's a pop-out window, and the arch is kind of terminating in an unusual way into the smaller, lower roof. So if you look directly down below the chimney, I just think that that's a really small detail. I wanted to see if you had worked through this since at this point, that intersection of this pop-out window in the center of the facade and the arch. On the first floor, correct?
Yeah, the side arch,
Right.
they have a window seat there now, if you look on the existing windows, and it's kind of a nice
Okay.
feature within that space.
Right,
So it was our sort of recreating it within the style. So we're trying to treat it as a square bay as opposed to an angled bay, which is more can keep with the style. And that's the reason that side arch gets a little bit smaller. But the whole idea was to give some three-dimensionality with an arched porch
Right.
leading to the wall behind. So, and you're looking at it much more truncated at that angle, so it's not going to be that minimal as it's appearing, because you're glancing at it at a very shallow angle.
okay.
Yeah, but that I think is helpful. I mean, I think it's good that we do that.
Actually, quick follow-up to that. So you had that sort of bay window, that window seat on the front. You have a similar feature on either of the two side facades there that are sort of these bump outs, oriel windows, whatever you want to call them. But they just are topped with flat sort of parapets. Did you explore any other way of having those handled, like little roofs on them with tiles, or perhaps cladding them in wood materials or something like that?
I have a little bias on shed roofs, with tile shed roofs onto a wall when they're that small. By the time you do the counter flashing on it and you try to put a piece of tile on it, it just looks like a mess, I think. So those are actually a plastered roof. So it's going to be a whole plastered three-dimensional element on the side. So we could slope it, which it would need to be sloped, but to try to do a tile roof in that short a distance with the flashing, I just think it's a mess. I'm not very happy with how those look. But I think there is precedent for doing very much a plastered feature, that the whole bay is a plastered feature. The one on the front is a little different because it's a continuation of a roof. So we're just continuing that roof down, so obviously it's easier to incorporate the tile on that one. But that was the intent.
Any more questions?
Super minor question, but the gutter system, I saw the gutters were called out, but what material or were you planning?
It was going to be a metal half circle, keeping it traditional as possible.
Thank you.
Probably not copper, but.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We'll get the boys up here.
Sorry, actually, I do have one question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure.
The window along that front facing Chevy Chase Drive, that pop-out window that we were talking about, in plan, you have it much smaller and only divided in two, but in your rendering, it's a 3-bay window? Is that more the intent, or?
Yeah, the
So the
plan
rendering is-
the plan is incorrect. The
Okay.
elevation is correct, yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for catching that.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? No? Well, with that, we'll
Thank you.
move on, thank you, to David Thorpe, who's listed as the applicant. Welcome. And if you would state your name for the record,
Hi,
and
my-
welcome to the Design Review Board.
Hi, my name is David. These are my two brothers. We live at 3202 East Chevy Chase Drive. We love our house and neighborhood. Thank you.
And we also have Douglas Hughes.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I have the privilege of living next to the Thorpes and their growing family, but I have to tell you, they're squeezed into a very small house. And aside from the 3 boys that are growing like weeds, they also have a nephew that they're hosting right now, and then, of course, Caleb, in a small house. So got compassion for them, very excited about this, been waiting 2 years for this to pop out. And I think it's going to be a great addition to the neighborhood. Our neighborhood, if you've never been there, is a neighborhood of families and people that maintain, remodel, and upgrade their homes. And it's anchored by families like the Thorpes. And we're very excited that they can get this so they can stay. We consider to be them valuable neighbors and valuable members of our community. And we've looked at these plans, how long? Just kidding. For some time now, a couple of years, and we're just, wife and I are in 100% support of this, and we hope that you support it too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this 3202 Chevy Chase Drive case? Mr. Gergo, since there was no opposition, do you have any need for a rebuttal?
Boys took care.
Well, with that, we'll go ahead and close the public portion. Yeah, that's a good point. Villia is always so good about that. Let's
We
see.
don't have any callers on this.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we had a lot of support letters, so. Does anybody want to start us off this evening in particular? Oh, Board Member Lockroff.
Well, I just want to say congratulations. This is just a great design. I concur that, I definitely support this project. The massing is wonderful, how it steps up the hillside appropriately. It's not too close to the front of the street. It follows the design guidelines, and I think you'll have a lovely home. I just have the one where the bay window is one thing that I think that does need to get worked out a little bit, and with staff, that would be great. I would still just like to see that as a condition, that bay window and the arch intersection is detailed so that staff understands what that really looks like. And then also, getting the plan to match that, I think that'll help clear things up. I personally agree that a 13-foot high garage isn't that high, and I would like to see those solar panels hidden. So I'm okay with keeping the height as it is for the garage. I like the materials that are used, the windows selected, everything is really on point. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Chagayan?
Thank you. I too concur with my fellow board member. I think it's a beautiful design, has a lot of character. It's importantly stepped back from the street. That's what we love to see with second-story additions. The massing is nice. It doesn't feel like a 3,000 square foot home, which is always a challenge to do, but this has been done very nicely. Materials are great, and I also agree that I don't feel the need to have to lower the garage roof, particularly because the Charing Cross Road elevation is higher, and I don't see it as really an issue for when we look at it in elevation drawing. Sometimes it's different from what you're going to experience out in real life. So I'm in support of the project, and I would agree with my fellow board member on the detailing of that one little corner is just something that needs to get worked out. Otherwise, I think it's very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I generally concur as well. I really like the design. I think you've done a good job. I love the meandering quality of it. I think that it works very well in evoking that sort of romantic Spanish style. I get what staff was looking for, and in particular, it was that one corner of the garage that sort of sticks up. It's particularly prominent when you look at the story poles, and originally I was thinking, maybe could we clip it, and have the angled roof continue all the way back, but, hearing your discussion and knowing that would really curtail the use of the garage in that area, I'm inclined to agree with my fellow board members that I'm okay with leaving it, and that would be effectively removing, I think, condition number 1. So generally, good job. I support the project. So thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Koskanian?
The house looks amazing, or the drawings look really amazing. Drove by the area, and I think it's going to look beautiful. And I concur with everyone saying on the board, and I do support this project.
Thank you. Yeah, overall, I'm in support of it as well. It's well thought out, well designed, and we really do appreciate the community coming together to support the applicant. So we were able to get a lot of insight from that as well. Seems as though a lot of outreach had occurred, which is always a good touch. And I agree with my board members on the topics discussed. I support the project, and it looks like there's no support for condition number 1, but condition number 2 and 3, I did not hear any opposition for, so I would assume those were considered fair comments. And so do you have any need to repeat back any
We have
conditions?
2. We're going to add a condition requesting a detailed drawing depicting the bay window interfacing with the arch. It's probably okay, based on what Mr. Garagos said, but we'll be able to verify that. If there's a problem, we'll kind of tweak it, make it better. And then we didn't hear from the board about the 1-piece versus 2-piece tile, if you have an opinion one way or the other.
Well, I would strongly encourage you to consider the 2-piece tile. I think it will help the design be more holistic, but I certainly understand cost consideration, so I don't feel the need to make it a condition, perhaps a consideration, but, that would be it.
Okay, so we'll add a consideration to think
Could
about
support
2-piece
that,
tile. And that's everything we've got.
Wonderful. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the project with the amended conditions stated.
I'll second.
Board Member Lockraff?
Yes.
Board Member Koskanian?
Yes.
Board Member Welsh?
Yes.
Board Member Chagayan?
Yes.
And Chair Simonian?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you. Our next case is PDR 220-9552, located at 221 Thompson Avenue. And Mr. Kiesel is the case planner, and so we'll give him a minute or so to get situated, and we'll start it off. Thank you. Good night. For the Chevy Chase project? Oh, for this new one, okay. All I have are speaker cards from the neighbors. I don't have one from the architect. Oh, great. Yep, problem. Hey, Roger, do we have packages, 11 by 17s for this one? Yeah, at my desk. I'm sorry. Give me the run again.
We could call, maybe? You want me to call someone? I actually do, yes. Yeah. Just don't say anything that confuses me.
Okay, I'm ready whenever you are. Great. Okay, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Design Review Board. The next item before you this evening is case number PDR 2209-552. It is a review of a proposal to construct a new two-story, 2,091 square foot single-family residence. The residence is located on the north side of Thompson Avenue at 221 Thompson, highlighted in red on the location map. It's located on the north side of Thompson on a 8,250 square foot lot. The lot is zoned R1, FAR District 2. It does have an H horse overlay. The existing residence on the site will be demolished, while the relatively newly built detached garage and ADU above it, as well as the storage building sort of in the middle part of the site, will remain. So before you is the site plan. This is Thompson here. The relatively new detached garage ADU is here. The storage building is here. And the red outline basically depicts the proposed house. Why don't I go through my slideshow fairly quickly first, and then I will just continue my presentation. So again, this is the site plan. The first floor, the entry is here. Thompson would be on the lower part of the page. The second floor, roof plan. The north elevation, this is the front elevation, front door facing Thompson. South elevation is the rear. And then the two side elevations, the west elevation as well as the east elevation. Some section drawings. And then this is the existing house. The lot from Google, the outline in red is basically the property line. The existing house is here. The storage area is here. And then the newly built structure here. And then I will just proceed with my presentation. Staff is recommending that the board return the project for redesign. And I'll just hit on sort of the major concerns of each of the three categories. And then at the end, if you'd like, I can go over maybe more specific conditions and then reference what I just showed you on the slideshow, if you'd like. So with regard to the site planning, the major issues really included that the front facade of the structure or the residence is basically in line. There's not a lot of play in the facade. The second sort of major issue in site planning is the retention of the guest house / storage building in the middle of the site really forces all of the new construction to be pushed toward the street. And while the proposed house complies with the front setback, the storage structure kind of constricts maybe some play in the design of the house that might be better suited for that neighborhood. Related to mass and scale, the significant concerns were the proposed residence does not provide really an acceptable transition or fit to the adjacent single-family residences or surrounding neighborhood. Many of the residences, in fact, most of the single-family residences are modest, like minimal traditional houses, probably built in the 40s, 50s. There are some larger multifamily structures on the site, but predominantly it's a single-family street. And the design really doesn't really acknowledge that with the transitions. And then the second thing, just overall, the residence really feels boxy and monumental, particularly compared to the existing single-family houses in the neighborhood. And then finally, pertaining to the design and detailing, staff had some concerns as well. The residence is contemporary in design and nature, but it's not really internally consistent and doesn't appropriately, as I mentioned before, transition to the adjacent houses of the surrounding neighborhood. One of the things you may have noted in the elevations, the house is proposed to have a number of bay windows, and that's really more of a traditional feature that kind of appears to be stuck on a more contemporary house. So some of the features of the design really aren't internally consistent with the overall contemporary design. And then, sort of a minor or a more minor thing, the siding really doesn't terminate appropriately where it's proposed, and it emphasizes the verticality of the structure, which really kind of increases the perception of mass. It's just under 2,100 square feet, so it's not a huge house, but certain things in the design really accentuate the size. As I mentioned earlier, staff is recommending the project be returned for redesign. Staff really believes that there are significant and really holistic redesign of the project is warranted. It's not simply, make the roof a sloped roof, just pinpointing some things. It's really kind of an overall, let's look at this fresh. There were a number of conditions in the staff report that staff believes the applicant should sort of look at and explore in designing a house that can be recommended approval by staff and approved by you all. And also the applicant really should reference the single-family design guidelines and incorporate the changes in the staff report, all of them or a combination of them, such that the proposed residence really fits within the neighborhood as kind of an overall. So I can conclude there. Otherwise, what I can do is go through the conditions and then go through my PowerPoint to sort of let you see what we were thinking. Do you have a preference?
Well, we've seen the conditions. Thank you. We've seen the conditions, we've read the conditions, and so if you feel as though that would be helpful, perhaps go through it somewhat quickly, because we do have some people in the audience, and we could, take it from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Condition
Because the
one-
conditions were quite descriptive, I thought.
Right, and I don't need to do this. If someone has specific questions, I can also just reference whatever questions.
Are there any conditions that staff has stated that we believe need some clarifications or some more details to?
I don't have a question about the conditions, but I did have just an overall staff question, if that's okay. I was wondering how many iterations of this design you've seen, if any at all, besides the one that's being presented to us?
2, including this one.
2, including this
Yeah.
one. And I guess in working with the applicant on this particular design and stating all of your, I'm assuming, conditions and recommendations, they still chose to come forward. Is that
Correct.
fair to say? Okay, thank you.
Board Member Lockhart?
Yeah. I didn't see a lot of information regarding the storage structure that's on the site. And I was wondering, you know, what is that? Is it a prefab structure? What is it? And yeah, was there any consideration in attaching to it and building, you know, was there anything regarding that storage shed that came up in your discussions with the client?
Right. The structure is not prefab. I think it was built in the 40s or 50s. I can't remember it's a permitted structure. I believe some of it, a small portion of it, is going to be demolished. If I'm remembering correctly, and this may be a question better for the applicant or the homeowners, I think it's clad in siding. You know, it's relatively large, but it was permitted at the time it was permitted. I think if it was proposed now, I think it's too big for us to permit. But I know the applicants want to maintain it, and so they designed the proposed residence to do that.
The board may also want to ask the applicant, there's what appears to be a residential component, and it's called a storage/guest house. 3 residential units wouldn't be allowed on this property, and so we should see if it meets the requirements of any of our zoning issues, but it is something that caught our attention, but we didn't have much info about it. So.
Right. And I guess my other question is just moving forward kind of question, is if they were to attach to it, is that feasible in terms of plan? I know that's just curious if this, you know, setbacks and everything would no longer comply because it was built so long ago. It's just everything is so far forward and the massing is so far forward. I'm just trying to find a place of relief.
Yeah, that it would be difficult to attach the two. That structure looks like at its closest is about a foot from the property line. So,
Thank you.
And that ties into our recommended condition about considering to remove that because it's driving the square footprint and the massing. So.
it is part of the overall floor area that they are allowed. It's calculated as part, which is probably one reason why the house is, you know, relatively small for a new house based on what you all normally see. Because that storage structure is, takes part of the allowable FAR.
And under a separate permit, they had moved forward with an ADU in the back. Is that how the ADU kind of appeared in the rear of the property?
Right, they, I would say a couple years ago, I wasn't involved in that component. They were approved a detached garage and a ADU above it.
I see, with an ADU above it. I see, okay, right.
Just so the public understands, this is, I believe, the last of the 2-story ADUs before the zone was changed, or the ADU ordinance was changed.
Makes sense.
So one of the last, let's say.
Okay. Do we have other questions for staff? No? Okay. Mr. Kiesel, do you feel as though there's anything else you want to add before we open up the hearing?
No, I don't think so. I mean, certainly we can go through the PowerPoint or reference the PowerPoint if you have any other questions, so I'm fine.
Okay. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and open the public portion. And I have a consultant/project manager, Susie Gregorian. Good evening. And would you rather be the person that starts off the discussion from the applicant's point of view?
Yes, that would be preferred. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful.
My name is Susie Gregorian. I'm an agent here on behalf of the property owner to review some of the concerns and information that's been provided to us by the staff report and some of the items we received from concerns from the community. So thank you so much for allowing us the time to speak and present our project here. So some of the elements that were considered in order to minimize that sort of large or mass impact in the public areas and on the community is the setback is actually farther setback than any other structure that exists on the street. We're at 26 for the front element, and we're at 29 where the actual main home begins. So we did take that into consideration to make sure that the home is set back slightly farther than the rest of the homes. As far as the contemporary style goes, I believe the thought process for that was that, you know, there is a mix of styles. Yes, they are more traditional, however, there's a variety. Some of the apartment buildings themselves have some Tudor elements. We've seen craftsman style homes there. We've seen bungalow style homes, ranch style. So we thought, considering that there's a lot of diversity, that, you know, perhaps an additional different type of style might be welcome. We did hear staff's comment about the combination of the traditional windows with the contemporary style. If contemporary is acceptable, we can certainly convert that to be more contemporary. However, based on what we read, it appears that most likely going for a slightly more traditional look seems to be preferred by the staff. So we do have some solutions to propose, which we're hoping is going to address all of the concerns. And if they are, then we can, you know, hopefully proceed with the project. So the first item was the roof, of course. It's a flat roof, and that's a very contemporary style roof. So we will be, we can pitch the roof to kind of match the entryway roof. If you want to pull up an elevation sheet, maybe that's on sheet, the rendering is on A302. Or yeah, that works too. So essentially what we would do is actually lower the height of the building by 2 feet. We would decrease 1 foot off of each story, and we would do a pitched roof instead. By doing so, that would also minimize the height of the entryway, and it would, you know, make it look a little bit less intrusive. As far as the, you know, pop-outs and setbacks and elements go to try to give some architectural interest to the structure, the top floor is not very big, and in order to actually utilize the second floor, they really do need the space that they're gaining by, you know, setting back the second floor the way they have. It is set back, the structure itself, 3 feet from the bottom level, but we do have a balcony that overhangs. So the second floor, or the first floor, appears to be set back from the second floor, but the second floor structure itself is actually set back about 3 feet. In addition to that, you know, we did take into consideration some more, you know, horizontal breakage, so that it breaks apart the massing by incorporating some horizontal elements. One of the suggestions was to possibly change the railing to maybe add some kind of a wood element similar to the siding to give it a little more solid horizontal break. Another possibility is to add a window above the entry door, and that way that'll also give an additional horizontal break. So it would essentially break apart the building in such a way where it wouldn't seem as you know, as blocky. You know, you know, as mentioned, the wood siding and the windows are a very traditional element. One of the comments mentioned the sides of the buildings being all stucco and wanting to add some elements there. So we were suggesting possibly doing some corner wraps similar to the front to get some extra wood elements in there on those corners to add a little bit of interest. The sides are set back. The bottom portion, you could see with the shading, is set back ever so slightly from the top area. And with the windows, we think that, you know, incorporating those elements helped kind of add some interest to the side and rear of the building. I think that was I think we covered all of the concerns there. Let me just double check here. Yeah. So that was just what we're proposing to try to help accommodate staff's recommendations.
Thank you. That was right on dot of 5 minutes. Do we have any questions for the consultant project manager? Board Member Chagayan?
Sorry, so I'm sorry, you're representing the homeowner, but you're not the designer? Or
I'm not the designer, no. I'm assisting both the homeowner and the designer to present the project.
assisting both. Okay, so the designer is not present.
He is present, yes.
Oh, is he planning
Yes.
to speak then, or?
I don't believe so.
Okay. I guess my first question would be, were any iterations, taking into consideration all of the,
Looks like the architect may be putting in a card.
oh, okay.
If it's better to ask.
Sure, I mean, a lot of the questions are going to be design-related, I guess.
And
So-
he could come up if he feels though you need to ask him, and if he's willing to talk, he could always submit the card afterwards.
Sure, okay. Great.
So you don't
He's
need.
filling out a card now.
Yep.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Name for the record. Good
My name
evening.
is Toros Balian.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Balian, so I guess my first question was going to be, did you take an attempt at redesigning based on Mr. Kiesel's recommendations and staff report?
There are items that we did redesign to try to get Mr. Roger to approve it, but there are certain items that the owner felt like we wanted to keep. One being, the windows, the balconies in the front, the sliding doors in the front, and white stucco with the siding. So there were items that we took into consideration, but there's other items that we felt like we wanted to keep
Okay,
and try to, see what the board would say.
great. And then as far as site planning goes, did you ever attempt a version that would eliminate that storage structure that's sort of restricting the plan currently and the design?
We did not, no.
Okay,
The owner wanted to keep that storage as storage.
okay. Thank you.
Can I make a comment regarding that? The front setback, right now, the existing home is 25 feet. The proposed is going to be at 26 to the front element and then 29 to the first floor. So we're actually set back more than what it is now.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Lockhart, I believe you had a question earlier.
I think it was just answered, so thank you.
Before I move on to the other speakers, are there any other questions at this point? No? You'll have an opportunity for a rebuttal at the end, if you so choose. And so with this, I will move on to the speakers that are present this evening, and then we'll also go to the speakers that are waiting on the phone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we also had a Stepan Kazanchian. Would you still like to speak from the ownership? Sure, sure. We have Paul Mamenstein, and I apologize, I couldn't quite read your last name properly.
Marmenstein.
Marmenstein. Oh, that's an R. Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah, I kind of just found out about this recently, so I don't really have any kind of thing prepared, but I want to come and speak on behalf of the fact that I've lived in this neighborhood for 25 years. I raised my son in this neighborhood. I'm 2 doors down from this building. I just want to say it's just a great area to live in. My son fell in love with it. It's like when there was one time I owned a house right down the street from here. It was a 2-story. It was not 2-story. It was a single-story 2-bedroom ranch-style house. We had 3 horse stalls in the back. We had 3 horses. We rode. We could ride right up into the mountains. At the time I grew up, there was 8-year-old boys in every single house, right? So we had a fleet of boys that ran around the house. I was friends with the lady that lived here, Millie, for years. She was an older lady. We were friends for years and years and years. I got to know their family. I lived across the street. When I first moved in there, I lived across the street from her. And then I bought a house right down the road. And then now I live in one of the apartment buildings that you spoke about up at the top of, near Victory on Thompson. One of the things I enjoy about living where I live now is I wake up from my bedroom and I look out and it's just these beautiful mountains. I get to see all of Griffith Park. Last week I woke up and I went to the window to kind of look at my view and take a breath air, and I saw these big red flags outlining the mountain. And I was curious what was going down there, and I went and read the big sign in front, and it's like, lo and behold, they're going to build a big building there, and it's going to completely block my view. I don't think it's all about me. I think everybody in the neighborhood is really upset. It's not, when the back unit got built, we didn't really know what was going on. I don't think there was a whole lot of notification, and we were really saddened to see that the horse stalls that were there, it's in a neighborhood where there's very few, I mean, in all of LA, there's hardly any place where you can have horses, right? It's a Rancho Equestrian District. It's a very charming neighborhood. One of the big charms is that we see horses run around. There was a lot of horse stalls in the back of Millie's yard. We were all saddened to see those go, because if developments are, keep eliminating all the horse stalls, pretty soon we won't have any place in LA to have horse stalls, if that's a continuing trend. We did see the building going up, and then we saw one story, but then another story. So it's just this big, huge building, a big square building in the middle of like you said, modest homes. These are all 2-bedroom ranch-style homes, very modest, extremely modest. And this thing, I don't know if you guys can see from, sorry.
And there's a 3-minute time limit, so that was it, but you could wrap it up for the next 10 seconds if you would,
Okay.
just so we're respectful of everyone's time. Thank you.
Okay, just from, if you guys could see, right, standing in front of the building, this thing is massive in the middle of a bunch of, this is a 1938 home that they're proposing to tear down. They're eliminating horse stall property, and they've already got a big, huge building in the back.
Thank you.
So if, like I said, I've been there 25 years, so if you have any questions for me to represent the neighborhood, I'm happy to answer anything you have.
Appreciate it.
Any questions?
No? Thank you.
Okay.
The next speaker card, there is no last name, it's just Ginger. Welcome.
My name is Ginger. I live right beside Stefan. And when I saw that thing going up last week, I said, oh my God, it's so big. And he was right there. So he said, Ginger, what do you think? I said, it's for this neighborhood, it's too big. Because you look at we have like Thompson, between Victory and Stanton, we have about 9 houses on each side. It's a small street. And they're modest houses, small and everything. And here comes a giant one. So I even told him, what do you think? And I said, why don't you do a big, a rancho house, a beautiful rancho, not this floor. It looks like it's in heaven. The structure is so big. That's all I can tell you. So it's up to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next speaker is Artin Garchian.
Arta Gorchian.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here. This is definitely a great opportunity to hear from the neighbors, and thank you for letting us speak. I'm going to be very quick. Being a designer, we live right across the house. We just moved in about almost 2 years ago, so this house would be my view every day. And of course, seeing the flags go up and recently moving into a Rancho neighborhood that I thought I have an R1 house and my neighbor has an R1 house, so we're always gonna keep this one-story residential look with the horses in the back and the little storages and sheds, and it's definitely not happening apparently. So I'll just say, reading through the minutes, and I emailed the planner, Mr. Kiesel, before I gave out my concerns, asked about the ADU in the back that is 2 stories with the balcony all the way. So it's very visible from the street. I highly encourage you guys going and just basically driving in our street, looking at the design. If you want to build this house anywhere else without a context, you look at it, it looks kind of fine, but in our street, we have a super narrow street with a lot of traffic issue, parking issue. It just looks gigantic. And just speaking about the site, the survey didn't have an issue, but if you stand on the street, the whole street is going down, it slopes down from the Victory, and the house is about 3 feet higher. So, with the 25 feet added up to that, even with the slope roof and everything, I highly recommend that the committee would push on this, so they would basically maybe get rid of part of the storage and push the building back. The 3 feet that is in front, the balcony is basically negating it's not working in our favor, right? If you want to put a balcony in that 3 feet. Just going through my notes with the 2-story in the back, the storage in the middle, and the 2-story in front, this lot does not look like an R1 zone. It looks like 3 separate masses in the 8,500 square feet that's there. It looks like a multi-story right next to it. It does not look like it belongs there. I have issues with the topography, as I mentioned, with the siding and the elevation on the front. The scale and the proportion, as it's mentioned here, it's very much out of character. It's on the entryway.
That was the 3 minutes, so 10, 15 seconds to wrap it up.
Sure. I'm just gonna talk about the entryway. It just looks very much like a public building, not an intimate residential building. And that form, if they could just maybe fix the form, that's a quick, cheap fix to do.
That's one of staff's comments already.
Yeah. So lots of other comments, but I could email the planner, I guess, after this.
We did see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, all of the public comments we received have been forwarded to the board, so they've looked at those too.
The only other card that I have is the applicant himself, which wanted to speak last, so perhaps it's a good time to go to the phones. And if there are others in the audience that would like to speak, you could just fill out a card and come on up.
Mara Bagilova, you're on the air. Mara Bagilova? I think we can hear you, Mara. Mara, are you there?
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air with the Design Review Board.
Hi. I just wanted to quickly talk to you about the fact that I'm a neighbor of 221 Thompson. And as we first saw the structure go up in the back, we were never notified about it at all. Suddenly, when it was finished, we saw it as to be obtrusive and not in alignment with a neighborhood which is kind of historical in rancho quality. We are a horse area, as people have mentioned, and we were so sorry to know that they tore down the barns that Millie had in the back. Most of all, I'm concerned about demolishing a home which is a 1938 structure. It is a historical home at that age, and it could easily be fixed up nicely and preserved. But to not preserve it and build something which is ultra-modern and not in conjunction with the style of the neighborhood is not at all what we want to live around. I've been here almost 30 years with horse property and feel blessed to have that. But this is being taken away every time they tear down the barns of a property as Millie's. So I want it to be understood that we want this structure to remain and to let it stay in its entirety. Same with the storage space. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Platt, are there other speakers?
Two others.
Two others, thank you.
Hello, James DeCarly, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm with State Glendale Riverside Rancho, and we do have property in the area. We have emailed the planner on this project of our concerns. While we do agree with staff comments that the current proposal is not consistent in any way with the neighborhood, it's not even consistent when we look at the remodifications that were stated earlier by the project manager. This modern box is not characteristic of the Riverside Rancho. Most importantly, this current home at 221 Thompson is an original 1938 minimal traditional style that's generally designed around 900 square feet, as this home is. This is characteristics of homes that were built during the post-Great Depression era. What makes this home unique is this home has all the original exterior architectural features of this time period. While we are in the process of including this area part of the neighborhood as an historical district, by demolishing this home will only destroy the history and the character of this neighborhood. It will also set a precedent for future demolition. Further, this is a single-family residence. By demolishing it will not help meet any housing needs. Instead, it should be restored, utilized as originally intended. This would enhance the character of the neighborhood by satisfying single-family housing. Adding on to the rear of this home, providing it complements the minimal traditional style at a single level, could also be considered. We're also concerned of the ADU in the back of the property that rises over neighboring existing barns, affecting not only views of homeowners, but also sunlight and ventilation that is necessary for horses in these neighboring barns. There's also an older guest house and storage shed on the property, which is a concern with the second ADU, which was placed on this property. I'm not sure if this is able to be classified as a junior ADU, but we have that concern in mind as well. But overall, this home should be preserved, restored, and maintained in its character. It could be added on in the back rather than demolishing it and affecting the character of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last caller at this point is Danielle Rain. Ms. Rain?
Hi, my name is Danielle Rain. I am calling, I sent in a letter, and I appreciate the Design Review Board taking a look at the letter that I have sent in. My comments are additional information. Now that we know that there is an existing storage structure from the 1940s, 50s, the new ADU, and additionally then this new home in the front, there will be three structures, none of which match each other, not built in the same time and not unified. And also the storage unit was a guest house that Millie's son lived in. So that will mean that there are two livable units on the property in addition to the main single-story guest house. That's my comments. If anyone can address this, I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers waiting to speak on the telephone? No? Okay. Then we're going to move on to the applicant owner, Mr. Stepan Kazakjian. Welcome.
the time to hear me out. I bought this house in 2016. I have a 12-year-old son, a 10-year-old girl, and more to come. And what I need is to be able to raise my family in the neighborhood. I love the neighborhood. I love Rancho Glendale. When my kids are over, I take them to the equestrian center. We go on horses. We go on rides. I know my neighbors. I love them. I've helped Ginger out several times with her husband that's fallen on the floor. I'm a good neighbor. I want to build something that everybody likes, but can fit my family in there. I built the ADU because I know my son 4 years from now is going to go to college. I'm going to give him the ADU to stay in because he needs something separate to stay in. Based on the lot size, the width and the length of the lot, this was the best situation that we can come up with. My lot size is very narrow. I don't have a wide rancho style lot that I can build a rancho style house. So what we did was we took the rancho style and we kind of converted it into a more modern look where, we can help appease the neighbors and also be able to fit my family in there. We had regular windows before. Roger asked for bay windows or something traditional where it can match. We put bay windows. We didn't have siding. We added siding. We did everything we could to accommodate both Roger, myself, and the neighborhood. It's very similar to the theory of natural selection. If we don't conform to our times now, we're gonna go. We're not gonna make it. So, we live in 2022, and a lot of the houses that are being built now are more contemporary style. And I try to incorporate both traditional and contemporary so that the transition would be smoother for everybody in the neighborhood. I have two pictures here of my neighbor directly to my side.
Can you hold it up?
Those are the one property is adjacent to mine, directly adjacent to mine, and the other one is directly adjacent to my neighbor. They're both two-story structures. They're both at 28 or 29 feet. There's multiple families that live in those two properties. I don't have an issue with that. I don't have a problem with that. As long as everybody has housing, everybody is living somewhere, I'm fine. If Ginger came to me tomorrow and said, hey, I'm going to build this really nice house, I would not oppose her. I would actually motivate her to do it because that's what she wants. As a neighbor, the neighborly thing to do is to, agree and say, yes, if that's what you want, fantastic, do it. If you need space for your children, do it. And that's what I did. Here's a picture of two homes in the neighborhood that were just recently built. One is two-story, one is single-story. Same contemporary style. We're changing with the times. We don't live in 1938 anymore. We don't live in 1950 anymore. We live in 2022. And we have to adjust with the time that we live in. I'm willing to work with you guys and make any changes that are necessary, but I can't make too many changes with the lot that I have. But I do need 4 bedrooms. I do need 3 bathrooms, 2 bathrooms, 3 bathrooms, and I need the storage shed because I'm paying $600 a month for storage right now. Extra storage for what? I have the storage shed. We want to preserve something about the property, I can preserve the shed. I can preserve, it used to be a garage, but it became a storage shed. That's the way I purchased the property. As far as the ADU, I built the ADU so that I can at least have some, the front house is unlivable. You can't live in that house. No air conditioning, the roof's falling apart. It's just ugly. It's a nuisance to the neighborhood, in my opinion. And when I bought the house, the neighbor across the street, who's Danielle's husband, Thomas, came to me and said, I hope you're gonna tear this house down and build a new one. I said, those are my plans. And I've been doing this I've been going back and forth for 2.5 years. And this is the first time that I've been here and speaking. I don't know what happened before Roger. How long have we been speaking to you? About 8 months?
I don't know that it's quite that long. I would say, I think probably late spring.
Late spring, but prior to that, it was 1.5 years of course it was during COVID, but I waited 1.5 years for even a design review member to review my plans. So I've been at this for 2.5 years. I live in a 600 square foot ADU on top, and I just want to build my house so that my kids can come over and feel comfortable and play in the neighborhood, just like he said. His 8-year-old was running in the neighborhood. That's all I want. I want my kids to be able to run in the neighborhood, to go next door and jump on the guy's horse and ride it. I don't oppose any of this, but there's just so much I can do with the lot that I have and the things that I need. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have any questions for the applicant, owner, before I close the public portion? Sir, do you mind coming up for a question from one of the board members, Board Member Lockroft?
Very, very quick question. The two photographs that you provided with modern homes, where on the street are they located?
They're 2 streets down.
Two streets down.
One is on Ludge Avenue, and the other one is on the street right after Allen.
Okay. It's not on the block per
It's not
se?
on the block,
Okay,
no,
gotcha.
no.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you, sir. So with that, I'll go ahead and close the public portion. And Board Member Welsh, would you like to start us off on this?
Okay, sure. Thank you for all the neighbors and the applicant for coming out and trying to deal with this quite unique property in a very unique neighborhood. Generally, I am in alignment with staff's recommendations here. I think that the house, even though it is set back a little bit further than the existing house, it is still just basically a big cube. And I think that's one of our tasks here is to adhere designs to the design guidelines. And there are multiple ways, as pointed out in staff's report, that this deviates from the design guidelines. So definitely the recommendation to review those design guidelines and to try to follow those would be very good advice to take. So I think I have issues with the massing. I think that it is basically too large of a cube. I think that the recommendation have a single-story element right at the front, and then pushing any second-story mass to the rear, further away, is an appropriate recommendation. It is typically what we do in a situation like this. We're not opposed necessarily to having a second story in a one-story predominant neighborhood, but it has to be done carefully. It has to be done respectfully towards the neighborhood. And we're not opposed to modern design either. Contemporary design is entirely appropriate. What I would look to see personally is a holistic design. This design looks very much like the owner described, where okay, staff recommended this, so you pull it on this. Staff recommended that, you put on that. I prefer to see something that is true to itself and much more holistically designed. And so I think that would be how I would approach doing a redesign for this. I think the comment about the monumentality of the entranceway is correct. It is a very monumental entranceway. It really helps draw the eye upward and just reinforces the height of the design, which is the exact opposite of what you want to try and do in a neighborhood where you're trying to be respectful of the single-story elements that are there. So I would recommend, taking a look at how that is being done. The balconies, again, I understand you've set back the second story by 3 feet, but, the balconies that jut forward completely, obliterate that and the intent of that. So I also don't think that the 3-foot setback in this case is sufficient. I think that you can have elements that are closer to the street, bumping right up against the street back with the first story element, pushing the mass of a second story further back so that you have, some a single-story element that is more predominant in the front, but then, the bulk of the mass is step back from that. I agree with Roger's comment also about how the cladding is done. I think we have to really focus on making sure that it's adhering to the design guidelines in terms of how it meets corners, how it wraps. I also note that the whole first story of the house is raised up 1.5 feet above grade. I don't see that there's necessarily a huge reason to do that. It just further drives up the height of the house. And I think that you could be bringing that closer down to the ground plane and help reduce that mass as well. So those are generally my comments. So, okay.
Thank you so much. Board Member Lockroff?
I would say I would concur with both staff and with my colleague. The project it's very monumental. I know a lot of people commented on size, and I don't think it's the square footage that's the challenge here. I think that I really do want you to have that house size that you need, and also that this is not an oversized house. It's just too massive. It's a monumental house. It needs to be, as my colleague was stating, that it needs to be set back much more significantly on the second story. I'm also not opposed stylistically to modern design at all. I think that the challenge here is consistency and a clear design vision, where I think that this does have a lot of tacked-on elements that are problematic, and even I think I recommend exploring even asymmetry, because the way that the entry is so much in the center and giant, it's makes it look even more like a monumental structure. Let's see, so yeah, I agreed. One of the callers mentioned that now you'll have 3 different structures that have different aesthetics, and I do think making them cohesive with each other is going to be really important. I do think that this should come back for redesign. There are just so many elements, and I do think that staff hit on a lot of other conditions that I agree with. I'd like to see more lighting information for the project when it comes back, and also just more detail on the materials that are going to be used. There were some general descriptions, but not specifications. So it'd be great to have more information on color and things like that next time around. But yeah, no, I think that's about it, but thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Jagayan?
Thank you. Also in agreement with my fellow board members and with staff here, I think you have a real missed opportunity when it comes to the site planning. You are limiting yourself more towards the front of your property, which then is forcing you to keep this boxy shape and going up. But I would strongly encourage you to reconsider demolishing that storage that's immediately behind your proposed residence, because I think it's going to just open up another level of opportunity to help you design the house that you're looking for as your dream family home. Again, as what Board Member Welch said, we're not opposed to modern or contemporary design. We're not opposed to 2 stories. It just has to be done well, and it has to be done in a way that helps, you know, fit the neighborhood and want your neighbors to love what you're building. You know, I had jotted down that the concern on my part it looked like it was more an approach of like design by block than it was really some thought put into it. And based on what you just told us of the back and forth, they ask you to put something, you just put it, really emphasizes that fact. And I would encourage you to step back, go back and really detail it out, have that design vision, have that vocabulary and language that you want, and let it come to life with the holistic design. It is monumental, it's boxy, it lacks character and charm, which I would think is part of the reason why you probably wanted to live in this neighborhood, because it does have a beautiful charm and character that most of your neighbors are here expressing as well. And one of the examples you actually shared with us, the modern homes, yeah, I think what is working nicely about those is they are understated and, you know, beautifully done, very detailed and thought through. It's not just, you know, pulling up a big boxy two-story and expecting everyone to like it just because it's contemporary. So again, not opposed to the size of the house you're proposing. It's not that big, but it really, you have to go back to that drawing board and really think all the details out. Thank you.
Okay. And Board Member Kasankyan.
So I agree with what my colleagues are saying and what staff's reporting as well. But to keep it short, I do agree that it does look very bulky. The home does look bulky. I think that second story, if you just had it set back just a little bit so it doesn't look too massive in the front, is definitely going to help. And I agree with my colleague with the front of the house, especially with the front, the doorway. It just, I think it makes it look even more massive, having that like roof up top. So, yep.
Thank you. Well, as a chairperson, I get to speak last, and I've always tried to create a process where we try to help an applicant. And I really appreciate the fact that you came out and spoke to us. I think it really means a lot. And we were able to understand the big picture of the history and what you've gone through. And I'm also glad that you showed us examples, and I think this is a good example. You know, if you try to follow it, I think I'll help you out. And you might be able to demolish some of the storage, not all of it, and perhaps push the unit in the front back a little bit, and that will help you out as well. But at the same time, you've saved some of the storage, which is, I think, what your intent, to be able to store some material there. But at the end of the day, it is a massive design, and it is bulky. And I think if you gravitated towards this design, if you're able to accommodate some sort of a design in this language where you step back the second floor, have more of a cohesive window language as displayed in this very simple window language. And at the same time, it has a variety of roofs. So it has the two-pitch roofs at the top, which is, I think, adds a variety of interest to it. So it's very simple, but it's thought out, and it's very contemporary. But at the same time, it has some of those traditional roof pitches that, is more in line with the traditional styles of the Rancho. I think, you were able to get the ADU designed and built before the ADU standards were into place, and that's at the rear of the property, and this is the front. So I think it's always nice to have some sort of a cohesive design between the back and the rear. However, you have this ADU that's been designed recently, you have an older shed, and you have this limited amount of space in the front to try to design a building into. And so I'm not sure if the idea should be to come up with a design style that mimics and matches the back with the front. I would, suggest come up with a very simple contemporary architectural style for the front, It's going to cover most of the width of the front lot anyways. And in so doing, maybe demolish some of the storage to give yourself some room to have a site plan that works. And, you know, everything was a little slower during COVID, and it's I could just see the frustration, but hopefully it'll move along a little quicker for you. And that's the intent, is to give you as much feedback as possible to try to push you along to picking the design team that's going to be able to implement that design style. And that design style needs to be thought out on all four sides of the building. And so, Mr. Platt, do you want to go over the conditions that you feel as though cohesively kind of interpret the thought process thus far?
Yeah, I tried to pull out the ones that sounded new rather than the staff comments, so it sounds like everyone's okay with the staff comments. There may be a little overlap, but I'll try to avoid that. I think everyone agrees in general this concept of the holistic redesign, not a piece by piece, just putting ideas on the building, but really think it through. Board Member Welsh specifically said that the setback of 3 feet at the front wasn't enough, and I think everyone has said that this needs, following the staff condition, some one-story element backed by where the second story starts with some setback from that. Mr. Welch also mentioned the grading or the house's position above grade. And so we'll work with the applicant to understand that and to try to push the house down as close to the ground as possible to avoid excessive height. Board Member Lakareff also specifically agreed with most of these issues, recommended bringing some asymmetry into the design to avoid some of the blocky issues that we're looking at. Mentioned also, which we've heard a few times, that there be some cohesive design quality to the 3 building elements if the one in the middle is going to stay. More information also was asked for about the lighting plan and just the material palette in general, which will undoubtedly change with the new design. Moving on, Board Member Chagayan did recommend the demolition of storage, so we'll keep that definitely in the arsenal of ideas that we've got to work with the applicant on. Again, the idea of the piecemeal construction. Board Member Chagayan also recommended looking to the neighborhood to, you know, get not the look of the neighborhood, but some of the character, some of the, what you call the charm in the character, and that could come through volumes and materials and things like that. So hopefully we can help the applicant move in that direction. And Board Member Kaskanian, I think, agreed with everyone, and certainly that it looked too big and too bulky. And then Chair Simonian mentioned specifically in terms of the holding up the example, which staff will look at that. We need to get those photos before we leave tonight. So, but we'll look at that example and see what we can pull from it. 2 of the things you mentioned were the idea of the cohesive window language, and then just finding a way to maintain a contemporary style, perhaps with 2 different pitched roofs or some other aspects of that. And that's everything I've got.
And, you know, I think the interesting part of it is that, you know, an ADU was built legally prior to our guidelines. And then there was a shed, of course, built, I believe the staff report said in the 60s, but whatever that was, and that shed was in the middle. And with the general direction of where the state's going, the idea is to try to, you know, build some density within this R1 zones, but at the same time do it in a compatible way and do it in a meaningful way that's cohesive with the rest of the neighborhood. And so I'm trying to avoid, you know, pushing the applicant towards, well, you have to demolish the storage unit in order to make a 2-story work or in order to make this proposal work, because I think there are solutions of trying to maintain the storage, perhaps make it smaller, but at the same time, still try to get a meaningful, reasonable home in the front for a growing family. And I absolutely do appreciate the fact that the applicant is trying to think ahead. He's saying, well, when my kids go to college, you know, it'd be nice to kind of have them close by, have them live in the ADU, and it's just, you got to plan these things out. It takes 2 years to even get to here. next thing you know, your kids are in college, right? So I'm hesitant to, keep on putting in the staff report, well, to demolish the storage. I think there are some solutions here. And I think this example, right, it's an idea. It's a design language. It's something that you've picked, which I would imagine you like the style. That's why you picked it. And I think everybody here likes it.
That wall in the front we need to talk about, but.
The wall in the front does not work with the zoning, but that's fine. Staff will have it for you. Well, it's gonna be part of the record. But in any case, it's a discussion point. And again, our goal is to try to help applicants, help the community, move projects along, and it just feels as though this one's stuck. And I could wholeheartedly tell that, I could tell that you've wholeheartedly tried. Everything staff has said, you've tried to implement, but it just looks like this mixed hodgepodge of elements, and you probably don't even like it, And so the idea is not to build something you don't like, and the idea is to try to take like 4 steps back, not 1 step back, but 4 steps back and look at it holistically. So I just wanted to share that. More specifically with the storage unit.
Yeah, point taken. Yeah, we weren't advocating that it has to be demolished. That was a suggestion of one way to open up the site plan. But
I just don't want to confuse them anymore, and I think.
Just so you know, this hasn't been sitting in design review for a long time. There were some staffing issues, and then a lapse between staff transition, which is unfortunate. We don't want to make that an excuse, but it's not like we've been working on this design so long that it's surprising that we're at this point.
Sounds like Mr. Kiesel inherited it.
He did.
I did.
And, okay, I think some sort of a deliberation for us to come up with some meaningful direction, and hopefully it's more prescriptive, and to try to help the applicant out. So I'm open to that discussion. I think I've been pretty specific on my vision.
I mean, I generally concur. I think that's the example that the applicant had brought up there. I also looked at it and said, that's not a bad design. Of course, that's a little bit wider than we've got here. So if you actually hand me that other one. If you took this other one, and this has a single-story element at the front, if you incorporated that as the single-story element and then had that element as the more behind, I think that can begin to look like an approach that would work in terms of keeping it respectful of the neighborhood, blending it into that neighborhood. I think something like that would work successfully.
An architectural Frankenstein.
Just working with what I've got here. No?
Okay.
So, but generally, I concur with Board Simone in his thinking about this, that we don't necessarily want to be prescriptive about that, but I do think that it is worth consideration. It is boxing you in, that storage unit, and I think that if you reconsider how you could potentially rework that, it opens up a whole world of potential opportunities for you.
Right. Just one suggestion on that point is, for instance, you could, this is just one of many ideas I'm sure you'll come up with, set back from the property line, demolish just a portion of the storage unit to make it more narrow and build a second story on top of that, and then make it a cohesive building that's attached and meet the setback requirements. That's just one idea. I'm sure there are several other ways that you could do that, so you can keep the storage and get the height, but it's further back. That's just one thought.
All right. Well, I know there were a lot of conditions that staff had, and then you added some additional ones. Is there a way we could kind of get a general idea of some set of conditions for there to be a motion on?
I thought that's what I did before, but we can fine-tune that a little bit. If you accept all of the staff conditions, I won't repeat the ones that I kind of was repeating a little bit. And ultimately, the new, what I would consider new conditions that weren't found in the staff was to address the issue of the house being raised above grade and trying to keep it down at grade or close to grade. I don't think staff spoke about the window language, I'm jumping ahead, sorry. The recommendation toward asymmetry, which I think we find in both of the examples that you've suggested that we look at with the applicant. The idea that there be some visual cohesion between the three structures is something that I don't think was in the staff report, so let me put check marks next to these things that are new.
But let's say if he does move in this design language, let's just say, you know, how's that gonna compare to the existing ADU and the rear one? And
We're gonna look at that. I can barely even see that from here. so.
'Cause that's what I'm saying is the narrow width of the lot, most of it is going to be this new structure.
This is a 50-foot lot, so it's actually without a driveway, so it actually has more opportunity for more house up front than most
That's what I'm saying,
properties we
which
look
is
at.
going
yeah.
to, you know, really block a lot of the, what we
There's
could
a
see from
driveway.
the street.
There's a driveway.
There's a driveway?
I believe
Yeah,
so.
on the right side.
On the
yeah.
right side, yeah.
What am I missing? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought there was an alley.
No, driveway here.
Oh.
But the garage is in the back, so it's still, you have a fairly large front facade that you could work with because the garage is in the back and not.
Right, right.
Front of
And I don't think what's in the back is all that superior in architectural styling, you know, that we want to mimic. And that's why I'm trying to deviate away from trying to come up with a new architectural look that kind of is a blend of the rear and the front, because the rear isn't anything special. That's what I'm getting at.
Right, no, and I hear you now, and I thought it was a different configuration, and I thought there was an alley, so I don't know where I've been, but yeah, we'll definitely be focusing on the front house. If there are things to pull from the ADU to link them in some way, we can do that. But I think the idea of cohesion does extend to the central building to some degree, although that itself wouldn't be that visible. So do you want us to move in that direction?
I would rather them focus in the front and really come up with a cohesive design language for the front that meets the first condition, A to M, which is already pretty descriptive, right? And I think if you're able to meet items 1 through F, A to M of item number 1, it would have, I think, been a far more superior design than what's being proposed now. And so I wouldn't want to make it more cumbersome than that.
And is there concurrence on that idea? Because we heard.
Yes,
Yes,
concurrence,
I would
yes.
concur.
Perfect. And so I will take my check mark off the cohesive 3 structures. And let's see. We heard a specific direction to look toward the neighborhood to find ways to make it compatible as a contemporary design, as a 2-story design. That's something we're used to doing, so I think we can work with the applicant there. And then and then the main thing we've heard beyond that is focusing on the examples that he proposed and finding ways to look at those more carefully and draw elements from them or ideas from them that might help the design.
Okay. Did that meet all our conditions?
I would say one thing is cohesiveness, and forgive me if I missed that one, but cohesiveness of thought in design, so that just there aren't tacked on elements to try to meet.
But just for the front building,
front
right?
specifically.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's in the staff
Right.
comments already, but that's
Okay.
definitely the direction we would
Okay.
take it. So.
Thank you.
Is that true that we have? Just kind of having more cohesion in the front design?
Yeah, I think that was one of
Yep, we'll have that in there.
And I'm going to mark this up as just good design example or
Sure,
analog.
and if you could add the second one also, and then we'll.
Okay.
So with that, I'll make a motion to return the project for redesign with the staff conditions as we've worked out, as well as the few supplements that were added by board deliberations.
I second.
Who's Board Member Trigan?
Yes.
All right, Board Member Kuskanian,
Yes.
Board Member Lockroff,
Yes.
Board Member Chagayan,
Yes?
Board Member Welsh,
Yes.
Chair Simonian.
Yes.
5-0, return for redesign.
Motion to adjourn?
Adjourned.
Oh, we do have minutes. Yeah, we have minutes. We already did the minutes.
We
talked
already
about
did the
those.
minutes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
yeah. And we need you to sign those, so.
Will do.
All right.
Adjourned.
Good night.
We adjourned at what time? 6:54.